Hey, we're back in the Shanty after Thanksgiving. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. I hope you enjoyed your time. I hope it was safe, and I hope you got a chance to get away from a little bit of this craziness and just enjoy your time away and enjoy the things that we're all thankful for at this point in time. Now that we're back, let's talk about a subject that has become top of mind for a number of you, and I know this because we've gotten questions about it. Okay, we've got a vaccine coming, it looks like. We've got 3 really good candidates, 2 here in the United States, 1 in England. There's been emergency use authorization filed. When the vaccine becomes readily available, will I be able to require my employees to take it as a condition of employment? Can I make them take the vaccine before they come back to work? And is there any law on this? Well, the answer to that is yes, there is law on it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here yammering at this camera. There is law on this, but we don't have a final answer yet, and I'll explain why that is to you in a second. So what laws are we talking about here that might touch on the issue of can I make my employees take a vaccine? There's really 2 we're talking about. First is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which, as you know, requires you to provide a reasonable accommodation to a qualified individual with a disability to allow them to perform the essential functions of their job unless doing so causes an undue hardship for you. And then the second one you might not think of, but it's Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And as you all know, Title VII prohibits you from discriminating against people based on their membership in a protected category. What's the protected category we're talking about here? The protected category we're talking about is religious belief. There are some religions that prohibit employees from taking certain medical treatments. And if an employee has a sincerely held religious belief that prohibits them from taking a vaccine, do you have a right as an employer to make them still take that vaccine? And the answer is under Title VII, an employee's sincerely held religious belief must be accommodated unless doing so causes you an undue hardship. Now, that's interesting, right? Same words under both the ADA and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, undue hardship. But those 2 things don't mean the same thing at all. As you all know, under the ADA, the undue hardship standard is very, very high for employers to prove. You've got to prove that it's significant difficulty or expense associated with allowing an employee to have the accommodation that they want. Under Title VII, on the other hand, you only have to prove that it's more than a de minimis cost to the operation of the employer's business. Way different. We're way up here with the ADA and way down here with Title VII. So those are 2 entirely different standards. So if I have a vaccine available and if I want my employees to take it, can I make all of my employees take the vaccine? We actually have some guidance on this from the EEOC, and it comes to us from back in 2009 when we were going through the H1N1 pandemic. The EEOC touched on these issues. Now, that guidance has been updated, but it was updated in March before we had a vaccine available for COVID-19. So we're going to need more updating from the EEOC, which is why I said at the beginning of this, we don't really have a solid answer yet. But here's what we do have. The question was asked back in that guidance. May an employer covered by the ADA and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 compel all of its employees to take the influenza vaccine, regardless of their medical condition or their religious beliefs, during a pandemic? We are in a pandemic now. Can we do that? Can we make them take the vaccine regardless of their disability or regardless of their religious beliefs? Remember, that's important to the answer to this question. And here's what the EEOC said back then. They said, no, an employee may be entitled to an exemption from a mandatory vaccination requirement based on an ADA disability that prevents him or her from taking the influenza vaccine. This would be a reasonable accommodation barring undue hardship. That's important. In other words, saying to an employee who has a disability that prohibits them from taking the vaccine, we may have to give you an exception, okay? Unless it's an undue hardship to do it, all right? So that's issue number 1. What about Title VII? EEOC said the following. Similarly, under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, once an employer receives notice that an employee's sincerely held religious belief, practice, or observance prevents him or her from taking the influenza vaccine, the employer must provide a reasonable accommodation unless it would pose an undue hardship defined by Title VII. Again, remember, different standards, same words, different standards. So I remember back in 2009, it was the first time in my life where I saw a lot of face masks being worn in the United States. Where I saw it was in my doctor's office, because there were a number of people in my doctor's office apparently who didn't want to take the vaccine. And as a result of that, my doctor was making them wear a mask. They're employees. If you don't want to take the vaccine, you have to wear a mask. All right. So that was the first time we saw that. So where are we now? Where we are now, based on that guidance, is the EEOC goes on to say generally ADA-covered employers should consider simply encouraging employees to get the influenza vaccine rather than requiring them to take it. But the EEOC says the following too. As of the date this document is being issued, there is no vaccine available for COVID. That was in March. We're not in March anymore. We're in November now. Might be December by the time we get this published. So where are we now? Well, the answer is we don't know. Here's what we do know. The basic rule is this. If you have an employee with a disability that can't take a vaccine because of that disability, you must accommodate them, unless it's an undue hardship to do so. And if you have an employee who has a religious belief that prevents them from taking a vaccine, you must accommodate them, unless it's an undue hardship to do so. Well, what's the difference between now and 2009? In my opinion, the difference now is that COVID has been called by the EEOC in this guidance a direct threat to the safety and health of your employees. That's why we could do a lot of the stuff we could already do, like take temperatures. We weren't taking temperatures in 2009 before employees walked in the door. We weren't doing screening questionnaires in 2009 before the employees walked in the door. We are doing all of those things now, and all of those things are covered at least by the Americans with Disabilities Act as medical inquiries. So, is this different than then? Yes, it's different. We know that already. Are the rules going to be different? We don't know. What we do know is we've got to get more guidance from the EEOC to figure out where we are and what you're going to be allowed to do with respect to mandatory vaccines. So before you go running off saying to your employees, everybody's got to take the vaccine before they go to work, take a breath, step back, and call us. Hopefully we're going to get guidance from the EEOC that tells us what we can do here. If we don't, we're going to have to work our way through the analysis for both the ADA and Title VII. And it's not as simple as just saying, hey, you have to take the vaccine. Maybe you do, and maybe you don't. Please keep that in mind. I hope that was helpful. I know it's not a real good answer to the question, but it's the best we can do right now. If you have any questions about this, call your WNJ Labor and Employment Lawyer, and we'll walk you through the process. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.